Hi everyone! For those thinking of building a PC recently, or friends looking to add more RAM to their laptops, do you feel completely exhausted? Looking at the quotes for DDR4 and DDR5 prices, doesn't it feel like they are constantly rising? And for some popular specs, they even tell you they're out of stock. You might be thinking, isn't the global consumer electronics market still recovering? Phones aren't selling particularly well, and PC demand is just mediocre. Is it inflation again? Or did another factory catch fire somewhere? To be honest, it's none of the above. The real culprit is something you can't even buy, something your motherboard can't even plug in, but it is currently ruling the entire semiconductor world. It's called HBM. Why is this thing making your wallet bleed? Today, we're not just talking about this battle royale for capacity in semiconductor factories, but we're also showing you who is scrambling for the leftovers, now that the former leaders aren't making standard memory anymore, and how this will affect the price of the computers you buy in the future. First, we need to understand, who exactly is the culprit making us spend more money? HBM stands for high bandwidth memory. In Chinese, it's called. The words are simple. High means high, and memory is memory. The most critical part is the middle word, bandwidth. You can think of it as the number of lanes on a road. The wider the bandwidth, the wider the road is. The amount of traffic that can pass through at once is terrifying. Simply put, HBM is a type of 3D memory where chips are stacked vertically like a skyscraper, offering ultra-wide roads and massive throughput. So, why is it causing DDR prices to rise? First, we need to debunk a myth. Many people think memory prices rise because of a lack of raw materials or a shortage of workers. Wrong. The core reason is that the three major giants Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron have experienced a serious shift in priorities. Imagine that memory manufacturers are like a kitchen in a super busy 5-star hotel. In the past, their main dish was golden fried rice, which is the DDR memory we use in computers. The chef stir-fries it over high heat, producing a plate in 3 minutes fast and in large quantities. Even though it only sells for $200 with thin margins, they could make a living by selling millions to the whole world. But now the AI craze is here. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang and other tech giants have rushed into the kitchen. They aren't eating fried rice anymore. They've ordered an extremely complex, extremely expensive beef Wellington, which is HBM. How difficult is this thing to make? It's not just a quick stir-fry. You have to grind the memory chips thinner than paper, then stack them in 8 or 12 layers like Jenga. In between, you use a technology called TSV through silicon via to drill thousands of holes thinner than a hair to transmit signals. Finally, it requires precise baking and packaging. The time it takes to make one beef Wellington, the cleanroom space it occupies, and the high-end machinery it consumes. The chef could have made 3 or even 4 plates of fried rice. And that is the problem. Although this steak is incredibly hard to make and has low yields, maybe 3 out of 10 are defective, but the price NVIDIA is willing to pay is 10 to 20 times that of fried rice. At this point, if you were the boss of Samsung, looking at the 10 limited stoves in your kitchen, what would you do? You'd definitely throw the pans away. Who wants to make fried rice? Everyone, go cook the steaks. This is what's known as capacity crowding. It's not that there aren't enough materials, but for the manufacturers, the opportunity cost of producing DDR has become too high. Every wafer used to make DDR feels like a loss to them, because that wafer could have been used for high-profit HBM. So, while the big three are chasing AI profits by shifting all their most advanced machinery and talented engineers to HBM, no one is left to make the affordable and tasty fried rice. Production volume plummeted instantly. That's why your DDR memory is getting more expensive. It's not that it was all bought up. It was squeezed out of its survival space by that high-priced HBM steak. Now, some tech-savvy friends might disagree. Wait a minute. Since HBM is so hard to make and the cost is so high, why must AI chips use it? DDR5 looks pretty strong now too. The frequencies have hit 8,000. Why not just use DDR? That's the key question. We used to say DDR is a Ferrari fast but with narrow roads. Only 64 lanes wide. HBM was like a freight train. Slow, but with wide roads of 1,024 lanes. But I have to correct that analogy, because current HBM has evolved into something terrifying. With the latest HBM3E, its single-point transmission speed has caught up. It can run at over 9.2 gigabytes per second. This is basically as fast as top-tier DDR5, if not faster. In other words, modern HBM. It's a high-speed train with a Ferrari engine. Its roads are dozens of times wider than DDR that's high bandwidth, and its speed is just as fast as DDR. This monster-level throughput is the only thing that can handle AI models with hundreds of billions of parameters. For AI training, it doesn't care about a few nanoseconds of latency. It cares about pouring tsunami-sized data into the GPU in the shortest time possible. That's why even though HBM is expensive and the yields are difficult, NVIDIA is practically begging for stock. And memory makers are doing whatever it takes to produce it. Okay, now that we've reached this point, you might ask, is it over? If the big three aren't making DDR anymore, who will make memory for our computers? Will it really become too expensive to afford? This leads into our second deep insider topic, the vacuum of power and the new players. When Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, who together hold 90% of the global market, decided to shift focus to HBM and high-end RDIMM for servers, the consumer market, the standard DDR4 and DDR5 we use, was left with a massive vacuum. So, who is stepping up? First, there are the second-tier manufacturers, like Taiwan's Nanya and Winbond. Because their technology is slightly behind, they can't produce top-tier HBM, so they are actually quite happy. Great! The big guys are eating steak, so the fried rice market belongs to me. But the capacity of these Taiwanese firms alone is nowhere near enough to fill this huge gap. At this moment, an even more aggressive player enters the field. Chinese memory manufacturers, specifically XM Changshan Storage. In recent years, due to US sanctions, China hasn't been able to buy advanced EUV lithography machines and has been barred from high-end AI chip tech. This has led companies like XM, while having plenty of capital for expansion, to be unable to make HBM or top-tier GDDR. So where does their capacity go? Exactly, it all gets poured into the DDR4 and mid to low-end DDR5 markets that the big guys ignore. This creates a very peculiar market phenomenon that I call the M-shaped society of memory. On one hand, the highest frequency DDR5 requires the most advanced processes, which have all been snatched up by HBM. So prices will keep soaring and stock will be very scarce. This is the pain high-end users and overclockers must face. But on the other hand, older DDR4 or standard speed DDR5 might not see such extreme price hikes, thanks to the aggressive expansion of Chinese manufacturers. They might even engage in price wars due to oversupply at times. So the future memory market will be very divided. If you want the best, you have to pay the AI tax, because you are competing with HBM for capacity. But if you just need something that works, you might notice many brands you've never heard of appearing on the market at pretty cheap prices. To summarize, why is memory getting so expensive? Because the world is undergoing a computing power revolution. AI's appetite is so massive that it has sucked up the resources meant for the consumer market. The big three have actively abandoned part of the DDR market to chase the high profits of HBM. And I have some bad news. As the next generation, HBM4, approaches, the number of layers will increase to 16. Manufacturing difficulty will double again. This trend of making steak instead of fried rice likely won't end anytime soon. We are witnessing a turning point in history. Personal computers PCs are no longer the center of the semiconductor industry. AI servers are. Your wallet is getting thinner because computers are getting smarter. If you want to know more about these hardcore tech insights, remember to subscribe and hit the bell. See you next time!